Happiness through curiosity on the Ranveer Show. Welcome to TRS Clips. The criticism that the government gets on a national as well as an international level is its treatment of minorities. And there are certain narratives being given to the West. As Joe Rogan says, most of Western media is very left-wing minded. So they will kind of project the narrative that they want their people to see. In terms of, for the longest time, people thought India was a country full of snake charmers and, kind of that Aladdin kind of world, mud houses, etc. And a huge part of India is rural. But we don't have snake charmers. We actually have smartphones and YouTube and TRS in like these rural places as well. So the West has a very morphed image of India since years. I believe, and this comes from my perspective of having a lot of friends who live abroad, most Indians that live abroad get a very skewed perspective of India. They think we're living in a land where Muslims, Christians, Sikhs are prosecuted. When you live here, I mean, and you and me are Hindu males, so we probably don't have a right to comment on what these people go through. For example, in some ways, maybe you and me are the white males of India. So I need to mention that here as well. When I do speak to my Muslim friends, my Christian friends, they do feel a sense of a lack of ease. My question when I hear what they have to say is, have you seen The Social Dilemma?
I haven't.
Social Dilemma is a documentary on Netflix which talks about how algorithms can really skew your perspective of reality. Social media algorithms. So if the algorithm gets to know that you belong to this minority, you belong to this group of people, maybe you would lean towards the left. Maybe. So let me show you more left-wing videos, posts that will shift you even further down the left. And the easiest way to manipulate human minds is emotion, especially the emotion of fear. That's my question. And again, I'm asking you this from a learning perspective. Like, do you have a perspective on this? In terms of what's your response to all the brown people living abroad, Indians, Pakistanis, Sri Lankans, about what this religious reality of India is? In saying that our economy is booming, it's growing at a crazy pace. We've historically always been prone to divide and rule mentalities. And our enemies will always try bringing in those divide and rule mentalities. If we actually give in to it and start giving fuel to this Hindu-Muslim rivalry fire, it's going to probably harm the economy in the long term. We all know it. The country needs to come together and work towards a stronger economy, in my opinion. Which is why podcasts like this, which do affect thought, which do affect national narratives, are important. Because the news will tell you one side of the story. But let's talk about the 360-degree perspective, sir.
Let's do that. So let's talk about our minorities. Let's look at India's track record with minorities. When the Arabic conquest of Persia happened, the Persians were within 2 or 3 decades almost completely converted to the religion of the Arabs. Some Persians, our brethren and sistren, decided that they sought to preserve their culture, their religion, Zoroastrianism. Where did they go to safeguard their religion? They came to India. They escaped by ships because the Arabs did not have a good navy or any navy at all. So these people from Persia, they came out of Persia, they escaped from Persia, and they immigrated to India. They did not go to Africa. They did not go to any other nation in the Mediterranean, in Europe, wherever. They came to India. Why was that? Because they knew they would be welcomed in India. And they were indeed welcomed in India. They were given land to settle down in Western India, in Gujarat. They were allowed to keep practicing their religion freely. There was no compulsion upon them. There was no tax upon them for practicing a foreign religion or any such thing. The only thing was that they were told to assimilate into Indian society and adopt the local language. Only the language, nothing else. And the Zoroastrians, the Parsis, they are among the best performing and most prosperous minorities in India. They have never ever been persecuted even once in the past 1,300 or 400 years that they've lived in India. Let's talk about Jews. Jews also came to India nearly 2,000 years ago. Even today, we have Jewish communities in India. India is the only nation that has never ever been anti-Semitic. There has never been a single instance of persecution of Jews in India. They have lived in India as a small minority for almost 2,000 years, and they are still practicing the religion. Many of them chose to go to immigrate to Israel and do Aliyah, etc. But they have had excellent living standards in India. They have always been respected and cherished, and nobody has ever made an attempt to force them to change their lifestyle or anything. Talk about Tibet. When the Chinese invaded and occupied Tibet, where did the Tibetans go? They came to India. India always had an open door policy for the Tibetans. They were allowed, they were welcomed into India, and the only place where Tibetan culture still exists is India. Northern India, Dharamshala and various other pockets of Tibetan settlement in India. So India has always welcomed minorities. India has always been generous, magnanimous, and India has always cherished its minorities. When it comes to Muslims, are there any concentration camps? When we talk about the Chinese, I think the whole world knows what the Chinese are doing to their Muslims. In Xinjiang, there are concentration camps. Maybe more than 1 million Muslims are being interned there. They are being re-educated. They are being forced to eat pork and God knows what. Does India ever do that? There are tensions from time to time. These are left over from history because of the past 1,000 years. It's been a terrible history. But there is no systematic oppression or persecution of Muslims, none whatsoever. And there are narratives that are being spun to make it look like Muslims are being oppressed. I think Muslims have far more rights in India than in Pakistan. Ahmadiyas are not considered to be non-Muslims in India. The Pakistanis do that. They consider Ahmadiyas to be non-Muslims.
What are Ahmadiyas for?
It's a certain sect. Even I'm not sure what exactly their belief system is, but the Pakistanis consider them to be non-Muslims. There was this very famous Pakistani physicist, what's his name? Abdul Salam. He was an Ahmadiyya, I believe. It's one of those sects, yeah. And he won the Nobel Prize, but the Pakistanis did not celebrate that. Right? No such thing is there in India. Whether you're Shia, whether you're Sunni, whether you're Ahmadiyya, whether you're Ismaili, whether you're Khoja, whether you're whatever else, everybody is accepted. There is no discrimination whatsoever. When it comes to Christians, what sort of living standards or status do Christians have in the Gulf? How are they treated in Iran? How are they treated in Pakistan? Vis-a-vis, how are they treated in India? India is the best place for minorities. Minorities have actually more rights in India than the majority. If the Hindus are the majority, Hindus have less rights than minorities. Minorities get special treatment. They get more privileges than Hindus. Minorities, whether it is Christians, whether it is Muslims, they have the right to administer their places of worship, and the government doesn't interfere there. But the government doesn't allow Hindus the right to administer their places of worship. So minorities have first-class status in India. Most Hindus essentially have second-class status in the nation. I think everyone knows this. So this narrative that is being spun, that Muslims are being oppressed in India or Christians are facing problems, these are lies. There is no such thing. I know Christians and Muslims. I'm sure you know Christian and Muslim. They may have certain perceptions, but have they personally ever faced any problems? I don't think so. Right?
Yeah. I just think, and this is coming from being a content creator for 7 years, fear is one of those emotions that spreads very fast in the world of media. And if big media houses want to grow their numbers, they'll often use fear-mongering as a way to achieve their results.
Yes.
Even that small narrative of a minority being oppressed in India will be blown out of proportion by media houses.
Indeed.
In saying that, while we're talking about this sort of right-wing extremism narrative that's probably fed to minorities on social media, I'm sure there is a vice versa version of that, which means that maybe if you're a deeply right-wing minded person, you're fed certain narratives on social media to instill even more hate towards minorities. And I've seen people like that even on the show who have these like really skewed beliefs about how minorities are terrible for India. I think the truth here will be found when you take a step back and understand the times we live in, which are so heavily dictated by social media algorithms and WhatsApp.
Indeed.
Which is dictated by Big Daddy USA again.
Yes. So they have ways of essentially creating a certain mood in a certain demographic.
Or maybe two moods
Yeah.
and pushing them
Polarized
far away from
moods.
each other.
Polarized moods. Yeah. opposing moods and opposing narratives. So when this guy Edward Snowden defected from the US, and I think he sought refuge in Russia, yes, he disclosed the existence of something called PRISM. So PRISM was this top secret, hyper secret program that collates data points from all across social media, from all your cell phone signals, from everything, from all the signals in the world. And it can give you an overall map of what's going on in each nation. And they had some, and one of the countries of particular interest for the US was India. So even in 2010, 11, 12, somewhere around that, they had a significant amount of interest in India. And today you have all these social media signals. Social media has really taken off since then. So it's very easy to trend certain hashtags and completely color and change the mood of a nation or a certain community within the nation at a moment's notice. The truth is that Indians are all one. We are all one people. We are the same DNA, we are the same blood. Muslims are our brothers and sisters. Christians are our brothers and sisters. I believe that even the Pakistanis and the Afghans and the Bangladeshis, etc., Sri Lankans, they are all the same people as us. We have been divided artificially. The West is great at divide and rule, and they seek to continue doing that in order to play their geopolitical games. We have to understand this, and we need to all realize that we are the same people, no matter what religion we practice, and we need to work together to take the nation forward in the right direction. No?
The actual game here is money.
Yeah.
And monetary growth is why probably the enemies of India as a country are trying to stop India's economic growth. The easiest way to stop it is create internal conflict.
Indeed.
By kind of manipulating social media algorithms, etc., etc. India cannot have as glorious a history as it's had in the last 75 years if it wasn't for APJ Abdul Kalam. If it wasn't for, just generally all of India's minorities working with India's so-called majority, which is Hindus. We have to come together for economic growth. It's been the lesson that we should have learned from history. Because divide and rule is a mentality used by external powers to completely divide us. In saying that, I just hope that this one little bit of this podcast helps kind of give out an emotion of brotherhood, of sisterhood, of safety to India's minorities. I don't know if it will, but I sincerely hope that it does. Because if by chance, even hypothetically, if there was ever a concentration camp kind of angle, an actual fascism kind of angle, you have a huge section of the majority which would actually revolt just out of humanism.
Indeed.
Or humanitarianism, whatever it's called. Because at the end of the day, I personally feel Indians in general are some of the most empathetic, nicest people in the world. I'm not talking about Hindus, Muslims, Christians, just overall. Indians in general.
Yes.
And there has been brotherhood. There has been good energy in this country. If you see it from a historical perspective, people will stand up in revolt. People won't accept that level of prosecution at all. And most of all, we have a lot more to lose because of that from a geopolitical perspective than, say, some extremist has to gain. We need to make the money over the next 10, 20, 30 years. And we're only going to make the money when that 11-player team has Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, Hindus, everyone working together. Money is the name of the game, sir. Thank you for watching this clip. If you want to learn more about this topic, we've curated a playlist just for you. And here's a link to the whole episode.